Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. We're going to hear more evidence from people who were in the tower at the time of the fire. Yes, Mr. Rowan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can I first of all apologise for the slightly late start? Unfortunately, our first witness this morning experienced some transport difficulties coming here. Can I now please call Samuel Daniels?
Thank you.
I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniels. Sit down, make yourself comfortable. I'm sorry you got held up, I gather, on the way here.
Yeah, I'm sorry as well.
No, it's not your fault. I'm sorry you had the problem, but there we are. You're here now, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Yes, Mr. Rowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Daniels. Can you give the inquiry your full name, please?
Samuel Ian Daniels.
Thank you very much for coming to give evidence today. First thing I need to do is formally put your statement into evidence. So can we have on the screen, please, IWS 50608. This is the first page of the statement that you've provided to the inquiry. I think you're ahead of me in that you've already picked up that there's a copy of the statement in the bundle in front of you. But if you prefer using the screen, it'll appear on the screen in front of you as we go through your evidence.
Okay.
Can we go to the last page, or page 15 of that statement, please? You can see there that the statement is dated the 31st of May 2018 and it's signed. Can you confirm that this is your signature?
Yes, it is.
There are no exhibits to the statement, but just for the record, there is an appendix, which is a floor plan, which is on the next page of the statement, and that's a plan of the layout of your flat, isn't it?
Yes,
Have you had an opportunity to read your statement recently?
I have.
And can you confirm that the contents of the statement are true?
To my recollection.
Can I start by explaining what I'd like to cover with you today? My questions are going to focus on the night of the fire, and I appreciate that that's not going to be easy to deal with. If you feel that you need a break at any time, please let me know and we'll stop. There's no rush in giving your evidence, so please do take your time. I will try and keep my questions short and straightforward, but if I do ask you a question which you don't understand, then just tell me and I'll try and ask the question in a different way. Thank you. Could we just go back to the first page, please? And just expand paragraphs 1 to 5. Could we start, please, Mr. Daniels, just with some background? It's right, isn't it, that you and your parents moved into flat 135 on the 16th floor of Grenfell Tower in 1983?
Yes, it is.
And you were a year old at the time, is that right?
Yep.
And you had a tenancy, and was that with RBKC?
My parents did, yeah.
And although at some point in time your mother stopped living at the flat, but is it right that your father, Joseph Daniels, lived in flat 135 for the rest of his life?
Yes.
And you tell us, and we can see that at paragraph 3 on the screen, you lived in the flat for all of your childhood, and then whilst you spent some time away, you returned to live with your father in 2012. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then, because of your father's poor physical and mental health, you eventually had to give up work in 2016, and you then became his full-time carer. Is that right?
That's correct.
Could I now ask you, please, a few more questions about your father's health, and particularly your father's health as it was in 2017? If I could have the next page of the statement, please. And let's leave that as it is. If we try and take it in stages, Mr. Daniels, in this part of your statement, you've explained that your father had problems with his mobility. Was he able to walk up and down stairs?
For a short period, but not more than a couple of flights.
And how long had he been in that condition that meant that he could only walk up and down a couple of flights?
Probably about a year and a half.
So, if your father had to leave his flat for any reason, would he have to use the lift?
Yes.
And what would he do if the lift were broken?
He wouldn't be able to leave.
And so, were there periods of time when your father didn't leave the house at all?
Yeah, I think for the last 2 months of his life, he hadn't left.
And so that's April and May of 2017.
Yeah.
But were there even longer periods that he had to spend inside the flat?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Could your father manage basic activities like washing?
No.
So was it the case at that time that you had to do everything for him?
Yes. It's more that he wouldn't, so he had to be prompted. And getting in and out of the bath was a difficulty.
If we expand paragraph 11 on the screen, please.
Mind? Okay.
But what you say there is that a lot of your role as his carer involved supervision. And your father needed someone to look after him to ensure that he remained safe. I reminded him to take his medication. I ensured that he ate healthy food. I stopped him from throwing things out of the window or engaging in similar dangerous activities. I'll come back to the issue about throwing things out of the window in a while, but
Okay.
Essentially, did you have to spend much of your time with your father?
Nearly all of it.
How easy was it to leave him without supervision?
It was a worry. It was a constant worry.
At the time in 2017, was your father registered disabled?
No.
Could we look at paragraph 9 for a moment, please? What you say there is your father suffered from diabetes and you'd requested assistance from social services and he'd been provided with a number of mobility aids. Did your father have a social worker in 2017?
No, he didn't.
And so can you just expand a little about what was your contact with social services at that time?
I didn't have any contact with social services as far as I remember. He was diagnosed with dementia by a nurse. I had to get in, and I forgot the agency they came through. They might be related to social services, but I don't think so. I know his name.
But was it through that agency that you then were able to get mobility aids for your father?
No, that was through the council, so that would have been social services.
So did someone come to the flat to speak to you about what your father needed?
Yes.
What then followed was that mobility aids were provided.
There were a few mobility aids provided, not as much as I requested.
You've already touched on this, but what we also need to understand about your father is that, as well as being in poor physical health, you explained this in your statement, he also suffered with mental health problems for many years and had been diagnosed with dementia in 2015, hadn't he?
I'm not sure of the date at the moment, but...
Let's look at paragraph 10 then, and that may help you. What you say is your father had mental health problems his whole life. Even when my mum still lived in the flat, he would throw things out the window, including bookcases and chairs. And at the end, you say he developed dementia, which was diagnosed in late 2015. And the throwing things out of the window was a feature of your father's mental health difficulties, wasn't it?
I would say so.
And what did you have to do to the windows then to stop him being able to throw things out?
Well, since the refurbishment, they had keys so you could lock them. So they were all locked, apart from my bedroom window. The kitchen window could open about 3 inches, so not enough to get anything substantial out of it.
Because of your father's mental health difficulties, did he become confused at times?
Nearly constantly.
But what sort of things could disorientate your father?
Banging, drilling, been giving new information. Most things would confuse him.
Was he someone then who needed a very rigid routine in order not to get distressed or anxious?
I would say he did need a routine, not that he didn't have one.
So did you struggle to try and encourage him to follow a routine?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Taking you back to 2017, you've told us about your father's physical difficulties and his mental health difficulties. Given the state of your father's health, did you have any concerns about him living in a flat on the 16th floor?
Yes, I did.
And what were those concerns?
In the event of a fire, he wouldn't be able to escape, seeing as you can't use the lifts.
And was it, in reality, was that the only way that your father could leave his flat?
Yes, without a lot of assistance.
Did you at any time ever try before the fire to get your father to come down the stairs?
No.
Could I move on, please, just to a different topic, and that's what you knew about what to do in the event of a fire. Can I take you to page 4 of your statement, and we'll look at paragraph 25. I'm just going to read it out in full, but what you say is, before the refurbishment, there were signs on the landing explaining what to do in event of fire. I do not remember ever being given any other information about fire safety. I do not recall exactly what the signs said. As I had lived in the flat all my life, I did not really pay much attention to them. In childhood, it had been drummed into me that in the event of fire, you should stay put, unless the fire was in your own flat, in which case you should evacuate. I had no reason to think that this advice had changed. I do not remember the signs being there after the refurbishment. And so, just to pick up on that last sentence, is it the position that the signs that you'd seen before the refurbishment, as far as you can remember, were not there after the refurbishment?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing them afterwards, but then I don't remember them being there before either. I knew I had seen them before, but once you've seen them, you don't pay attention to them anymore, so they just blend into the background.
And who was it that drummed into you that in the event of a fire you stay put?
I've got no idea.
But is that very much something that was in your mind throughout your time living in Grenfell Tower?
Yes, I mean, I think there was a fire previously that I was in, so I think from then onwards I had it in my head that you had to stay put and put towels underneath the doors to stop smoke coming in.
I'd like to just show you a photograph, but before I do, Mr. Chairman, if I could just give the usual warning. It's a photograph we've actually seen before. It's taken after the fire, but for those who may find any such images distressing, if they wish to leave, now would be the time. But again, looking at the hearing room, I don't think there's anyone who feels the need to do so. Could we have, please, BLA 402416? Just to explain this photograph to you, Mr. Daniels, it's a photograph of a fire safety notice, and it was sited between the lifts on the 3rd floor. And we can see at the top it says there's a stay-put policy for residents unless the fire is in or affecting your flat. Now, this is a notice that was there after the refurbishment on the 3rd floor. The question I'd like to ask you is this. Do you remember seeing a notice like that on your floor?
No.
And if we break that down, is it no, I don't remember? Or
I don't remember seeing that sign anywhere.
And you say you don't remember seeing it anywhere. I mean, did you see any sign similar to this on any other floor in the tower?
No.
So, going back to what you told us in paragraph 25, in 2017, what was your understanding of what you should do as a resident in the event of a fire in the tower?
Stay put unless told to do otherwise.
And again, just for clarity, after the refurbishment, did you get any advice from any organisation about what to do in the event of a fire?
No.
Did anyone provide you with any information about what you should do as the carer for your father in the event of a fire?
No.
Did anyone ever discuss with you as his carer what might be needed should he have to evacuate the building?
No.
Can I take you back to your statement, and let's look at page 5. No, sorry, back to page 4, please. IWS 608, page 4. And can we expand paragraph 26? In this paragraph, Mr. Daniels, what you've said is that I believe there was a working fire alarm system in Grenfell Tower at the time of the fire. There always had been in the past, and I had no reason to think that it would have been removed. Now, again, just to help you, we should also look at paragraph 51 of the statement. Which is, I think, on page 8, please. Thank you. Have you got paragraph 51, Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Thank you. It's just the second sentence there, because what you say is prior to the refurbishment, if there was a fire in the block, then you would hear a really loud bell ringing outside the front door. It was loud enough to wake you if you were asleep. It did not go off that night. We'll come back to the events of the night a little later on. So I just want to ask you some questions about the fire alarms. When you say that there was a really loud bell ringing outside the front door, is that the front door of the flat?
Yeah, in the communal hallways.
And it would ring in your communal hallway. Where else would it ring?
In all of them.
And would it be also ringing on the ground floor?
I would expect so, but I haven't heard it from the ground. It's the same alarm as if you were in the lift and you got stuck, you would press the alarm and the bell would go off. So if you held the button down, it would continually go off. So it was the same alarm. It's a very loud alarm. But
Did you, after the refurbishment, did you see anything on your landing, in the communal hallway in your floor, that looked like a fire alarm?
smoke detector. So the same smoke detector that had always been there was still there, as far as I know.
Can we look at an image then, please? And again, I just warn that this is a photograph taken out after the fire, but it's a photograph that we have seen recently. It's BLA 402513. You could rotate that, please. This is a photograph taken on floor 6. So it's not your floor, but we can see in the ceiling there what looks like a sort of white plastic object. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is that what you're thinking of when you say that you saw a smoke detector?
Yeah, that's the one.
And is that what you're also thinking of when you're saying that there was a fire alarm in the communal hallways?
That's what I'm referring to.
And taking you back to your own floor, was there a detector like that on your floor?
There definitely was, yeah.
Could you just help me for a moment with the bell?
Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds as though you heard the bell go off a few times while you were living in your flat.
Yeah, countless times.
Yeah. Did you notice what the bell looked like? Did you see it?
No, you couldn't see the bell. You could just hear it.
Oh, right.
So I'm not sure where it was located.
Okay.
But I assumed that there was one on each floor because you could hear it so loudly.
Yeah. Yeah, all right, thank you very much.
And you'd experienced that bell and that alarm going off before the refurbishment, hadn't you?
Yes.
Did anyone tell you during the course of the refurbishment or afterwards that it had been removed?
No. No.
Could we go to what alarms there were in your own flat? Did you have smoke alarms fitted in the flat?
Yeah, we did during the refurbishment. We had one put in the hallway and one in the kitchen.
And in 2017, were those working?
As far as I know, they were.
Did you ever experience them going off at all? For example, when you were cooking?
Once my father set off the alarm in the kitchen, burning some food.
Did you, in addition to those alarms, have a carbon monoxide alarm?
I'm not sure.
But can you remember if anyone ever came to the flat to give you a carbon monoxide alarm?
No, the fire brigade came to the flat and fitted the 2 smoke alarms. I'm not sure if one was a carbon monoxide detector alarm.
Thank you. I just want to ask you now some questions about the general layout and condition of the flat as it was in 2017. Could I take you, please? It's page 6 of your statement, and I want to look at paragraph 40. I don't need to read it all out, Mr. Daniels, but I just want to pick up the point that you say that there were, and this isn't part of your statement where you're discussing the refurbishment, but you say new front doors were mandatory in all of the flats, and so the front door for your flat was replaced. Is that right?
Yeah, it was.
But what you do continue then to say is that the locking mechanism on my door kept breaking. A few months before the fire, one of the hinges came out. I called the tenant management organisation repair line, and they sent a man out to fix it. And he took the middle hinge out of the door and told you that you'd need a new door. And a booking was made, or he said he would make a booking for the door to be replaced, but it never got changed. And what you say at the end was that that meant that even though they were supposed to be self-closing doors, mine was not self-closing at the time of the fire. Is that right?
That is right.
Now, so you were aware before the fire that the new door that had been fitted was meant to be self-closing?
Not at the time, I've only since.
So when this repairman came to fix the problem with the locking mechanism, what effect did that have on how you could use the door?
Well, to elaborate, the door wouldn't close when the hinge broke. So the middle hinge bent, or the screws bent that were holding it in, so the door wouldn't close at all, so I had to phone them. And the effect it had is I could close the door.
By him
removing the middle hinge.
And you were there when he did it and saw him do it, did you?
Yes.
And
before the hinge broke, did the door have a self-closing mechanism?
No, I mean, the door wouldn't close because there were also problems with the lock.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, it would close by itself, but it wouldn't lock.
Right.
Or not even lock, it wouldn't, the locks wouldn't go into place.
Right.
If you know
so
what I
you
mean.
had to push
You
it
had to
manually.
push it manually.
And after the hinge broke, the repair person removed that central hinge, is that right?
Yes.
So the door would swing, but again the lock wouldn't engage, is that what you're saying?
That is, yeah.
Yeah.
picking up on the chairman's last point, so even after the repairman had come to close the door, you would have to physically pull it shut, would you?
Yeah.
To make sure that it had locked.
Yes, you would.
Do you remember any draft problems with the door?
No. No. I mean, there was no wind in the communal hallway or on my floor, so no. I mean, you could smell your neighbours cooking, but that's about it.
And so we can understand what the door looked like. This was a door that had a letterbox in it, is that right?
Yes, it did.
If we could look now at paragraph 41, please. You've described that, and this is again where you're discussing the changes that were brought in place during the refurbishment, but that a boiler system, and you described as an enormous boiler systems were installed in each flat and new pipes were fitted. Can I bring up your plan, please? And it's IWS 608, page 16. Can you just, using that, just help us with where the new boiler was placed?
So, in the entrance, just on your left, the boiler would be about a foot inside the front door.
So, before we reach the door that would allow you to get into the box room?
Yes.
And so you now had a boiler placed in your entrance hall. Did that have any effect on how easy it was to come in and out of the front door?
Not for me, but for my father, it probably had an effect. Probably hindered his movement.
Just help me again. Imagine yourself standing outside your front door, about to walk in. Was
Yeah.
the boiler on the left side or the right side?
It was on the left.
Thank you.
What you've also, if we take you back to your statement, page 7, please. Again, expand paragraph 41 and 42, please. You say there that the pipes were left exposed running through the flats, and inside my flat, an exposed hot water pipe ran from my father's room through my room and into the living room. And was that flat were they still exposed pipes running into your flat in June 2017?
I don't know about running in, but running through. So through the bedrooms and the living room.
And did they run along the tops of the walls or along the bottom?
No, along the bottom.
And so these, if they were running through your flat, where were they coming from, the pipes?
I'm guessing the neighbour's flat.
And obviously, for the pipe to run through, there would need to be a hole in the wall. Was there a tight seal around the holes where the pipes were running through?
No.
So can you describe what the holes were like, please?
Crude holes drilled through the walls that were too large for the pipes.
And how big were the pipes?
I'd say an inch or two. Yeah, an inch or two.
Were these like sort of, can we imagine the sort of pipes that you have running to radiators?
Those pipes, exactly. Yeah.
And did you notice whether there were holes, if you like, on the outside walls of your flat, the walls that opened into the communal hallway?
Above the front door, there were some holes made, but I think they were filled. We didn't have gas in my flat, so yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
So you can't remember there being any holes from the communal hallway?
No, I
into
can,
your
but
flat?
I think they were filled up with some kind of filler.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if may I ask now for just a short break?
Yes. Right. Well, we have a break from time to time, Mr. Daniels, for all sorts of different reasons. We're going to have one now. How long do you want? 10 minutes?
10 minutes maximum.
All right. So we'll stop until, well, let's say 11:15. That's a convenient point. Please don't talk to anyone about your evidence while you're out of the room. And we'll resume at 11:15. If you'd like to go with the usher, she'll look after you. Right, 11:15 then, please. Right, could you ask Mr. Daniels if he's ready to come back, please? All right, Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Ready to keep going?
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Rabbit.
Mr. Daniels, before we had the short break, I was asking you questions about the condition of your flat in 2017, and I'd like to just ask you a few more questions on that topic, please. Can I take you now to paragraph 43 in your statement, which is on page 7? In that statement, you're talking about the windows that were fitted as part of the refurbishment. And it's right, isn't it, that you, in your flat, you had all the windows replaced?
We did.
And what you say is that they did not appear to be fitted very well. There was always a draft coming through my bedroom window, even when it was closed and locked. As far as I remember, the old windows did not let in a draft. The windows in my flat were all locked because my father had a tendency to throw things out of the window. I therefore left all the windows locked apart from my window and the kitchen window, which was sometimes open.
Yes, it's true.
Just so that we can kind of orientate ourselves, let's look at your plan quickly, page 16. We've got 2 bedrooms marked on there, bedroom 1 and bedroom 2. Which one was your bedroom?
Bedroom 2.
And was your bedroom window the only window in the flat where you would feel a draft?
As far as I remember.
And in relation to your bedroom window, where was the draft coming in?
At the bottom of the frame. So in between the wall and the frame.
Underneath the windowsill?
Underneath the windowsill, yeah.
Okay.
And can you say how strong that draft was?
Depending on the conditions, it was... It was enough to be noticeable even in a mild wind.
You've spoken of the communal hallway. Did you know in June 2017 if there was a ventilation system in the communal hallway?
There were always vents in the communal hallway. I didn't know the purpose of them, ever. I assumed they were for getting smoke out and having fresh air in the communal areas.
And when you were in the communal areas, other than just using it as a route to your flat, did you ever spend time standing outside the communal areas, for example, having a cigarette or something like that?
Yes. And we set off the fire alarm.
Well,
the communal fire alarm.
Right, let's come back to that in a moment then. Let's finish with the system. When you were out there on the communal area, did you ever feel the movement of air at all?
No.
Did you ever hear the sound of a fan?
No.
Now, you've just mentioned that when you were out in the communal hallway having a cigarette, you would set off the fire alarm.
Yeah, one of my friends, not me.
Was that after the refurbishment?
No, previously.
Right. So after the refurbishment and around June 2017, were you ever aware of that alarm that we looked at being set off on your floor?
Sorry, after the refurbishment?
Yes.
No.
Even by cigarette smoke?
No. I wish I'd have tested it now, but no.
And what about you've told us you had 2 smoke alarms in your flat, one in the hallway, one in the kitchen.
Yeah.
How sensitive were those?
As I said, the kitchen one went off once, and there was quite a lot of smoke in the kitchen at that time, so I couldn't really judge how sensitive they were.
What I'd like to do now, Mr. Daniel, is to turn to the events of the night themselves.
Yeah.
But if we start off, well, let's stick with that plan that we were just looking at. It's helpful if we just start off by understanding the layout of your flat.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that flat 135 is in the northwest corner of the tower. And what we can see there is you had a sitting room and 2 bedrooms. And is it right that at least 2 of the sitting room windows and the bedroom windows would have faced north?
Yes.
And so that would mean that from those windows you could look out onto Kensington Aldridge Academy, the school.
Yeah, you could.
And we've got, again, just so that we can see doors coming off that open into the sitting room and the 2 bedrooms, and there's a hallway there, is there, running along to the entrance, is that right?
Yep, correct.
Let's go back then to the statement on page 8. If we pick it up from, if we could just expand paragraphs 47 to 50, please. You explained that on that night, it was soon after midnight, you were lying in bed and you were browsing the internet. And you've put, if you look at paragraph 48, I think I first became aware of the fire at approximately 12:45. We'll look at what you noticed at that time, but can I start off by asking you this question? What do you base your time of 12:45 on?
The subsequent events after that, so me leaving the tower block.
So is it a case of working back in your mind to
I worked
try...
back from the time I left the block.
Thank you. And at that time, what you say is that you began to smell smoke.
Yes.
Was your bedroom window open at the time?
I doubt it. Oh. It could well have been, yes. On a night like that. I can't remember, but probably was.
And if we look at paragraph 48, what you describe the smoke as is it smelt electrical. I thought maybe it was an issue with a plug socket or that I'd dropped a lit cigarette on my bed. It wasn't a smell I was used to. It was similar to the smell when you drop a cigarette and it starts to burn on a mattress, but not quite the same. And you explained that you checked over the room but couldn't find the source of the smell. Did you have any sense of where it might be coming from into your bedroom?
I thought it was in my property, so I checked around my property, the living room. I thought my father might have left the oven on or burnt something, or a socket had been overloaded. So I had, once I couldn't locate it in my house, I had no idea where it was coming from.
So again, breaking that down, what you did at that time then was not only to check in your bedroom, but around the property.
Yeah.
So did you check which other rooms in the flat did you look at?
The living room, the kitchen, hallway.
And that didn't help you at all with trying to work out where the smell was coming from?
No, the smell was only in my room, as far as I can remember at that time.
So what you were left with was a smell that you were able to say was in your room, but you couldn't tell what was causing it or where it was coming from.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if we look at 49, you say that after about 20 minutes, I was still occasionally getting whiffs of the smell. Had the smell lessened by then, or was it getting stronger? Or?
It was much the same. It was just occasional occasionally you would smell it, and then it would
And
disappear again.
was it just and it was just a smell rather than any sort of awareness of smoke being in the bedroom?
Yeah, it was just a vague smell of plastic or... Yeah.
But what you tell us in that same paragraph is that what you then decided to do was go and check the kitchen to see if the cook had been left on.
Yep.
And as you made your way from your bedroom to your kitchen, did you pick up the smell in the hallway or anywhere else, or was it still very much still in your bedroom?
It was mainly in my bedroom. I can't remember it being anywhere else at the beginning of the evening.
When you got to the kitchen, could you smell any smoke in the kitchen itself?
Not that I remember, no.
And the smell hadn't changed at all in the 20 minutes that had passed since you first noticed it?
No.
If we look at paragraph 50, what you say there, and I'll try and summarise it, is that you looked out of the kitchen window and saw flickering on the panels of the new school in front of the block.
Yeah, that's incorrect. It should be the living room window.
I see. So was this something that you did the first time you'd noticed smoke? Or noticed the smell?
No, I didn't think it was outside the block. I did think it was outside the block, but I didn't... In the beginning, I thought it was in the flat, so I didn't look out the windows at that stage. After the 20 minutes, I started looking out the windows.
So if we just get the sequence clear.
Yeah.
You're in your bedroom browsing the internet.
Mm-hmm.
You pick up on this smell. You checked your bedroom.
Yeah.
That didn't help you to identify where the smell was coming from.
No.
And then you looked in the living room to see whether it was elsewhere in the flat.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you couldn't tell where the smell was coming from.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then did you go back to your bedroom after
Yes,
that?
I did, yeah.
And then was it after that that you thought, because you were still getting occasional whiffs of a smell, that you needed to look around again?
Yes, exactly. But I felt very safe because the alarm wasn't going off, so I thought all was well.
And if we look at paragraph 50, and you're right for this, because what you say it should read is that I looked out of the living room window.
Yeah, that's right.
And you now have a memory of looking out and of the living room window and seeing flickering on the panels of the school.
Yeah.
But at that time, is it also right that your thought was that if it was a fire, it was outside the block?
Yes, I thought it was in front of the sports centre or under the walkway where there were rubbish bins, which sometimes kids would set them on fire or burn mopeds, something like that.
And so if we look at the last sentence of the paragraph 50, you say, I returned to the computer. Does that mean that what you did was go back to your bedroom?
I ignored it, yeah.
If we, on the same page, please, but just let's look at paragraph 51. What you're saying there is, you start off the paragraph with, after another 10 minutes, the smell became stronger. Again, just to try and break that down a little bit, is it your recollection that there was sort of 10 minutes where nothing happened and then you began to notice that the smell was getting stronger?
Yeah, that's how I remember it.
And how quickly did the smell become stronger?
It's very hard to estimate how quickly the smell... I mean, I think 10 minutes is my kind of recollection.
But was it that, there you were in your bedroom,
It wasn't all of a sudden a very strong smell.
did it slowly
was a
start building
gradual-
up?
Yeah.
And although the smell was getting stronger, was it still the same smell?
Yes.
Still, as you describe it, the sort of smell that you get if you dropped a lit cigarette on a mattress?
Yeah, I would say burning foam or plastic.
And if we go just to look at the next page, please. Let's look at the top of that page. So page 9. And what happened then, I think, is that you left your bedroom and went into the sitting room again. And was it that then you noticed emergency vehicles with flashing lights?
Yep, correct.
And again, just so that we can be clear, I think you've already told us, but the sitting room windows would all have been locked, wouldn't they?
They were locked, yes. So it was in the reflection on the academy that I could see the flashing lights on the panels.
And at that time, in that period of time, a number of things have happened, haven't they? The smells got stronger in your flat. Mm-hmm. Your first time that you look out the window, you see flickering, and you're thinking it's a fire outside the tower block, and now you see emergency vehicles. At that time, what were you thinking? What was your thinking about what was going on?
I thought either the rubbish bins under the walkway had been set alight, or that a moped had been burnt by kids on the green in front of the sports centre.
Okay, could we look, please, at paragraph 52? And this is, I think, doing the best that you can with time, Mr. Daniels. What you've said is this is about 1 o'clock, 1:10 a.m. And is that again working backwards in your mind from
Yes.
when you left the tower?
Yes.
You said, I thought I'd go down and see what was going on, so I got my keys and my phone and opened our front door. I could smell a faint smell of smoke in the communal corridor. I'll come back to that in a moment, but aside from your bedroom, was there at this time, were you aware of a smell anywhere else in the flat?
No.
And as you moved to your front door to access the communal, what you've called the communal corridor, did you have any awareness of smoke coming through the door at all?
The front door?
Yes.
No.
So, again, just so that we can be clear, there was nothing in your hallway that gave you any concern.
The faint smell of smoke gave me concern.
But did you first notice that when you opened the front door?
I'm not sure when I noticed that. It was... Yeah, I'm not sure the exact time.
But is it clear in your mind that when you stepped out into the corridor, you did notice that faint smell of smoke?
Yes, I changed the way of thinking. So I didn't go down to see what was going on because I thought it was in the block then.
Could you see any smoke at all?
No.
And you've already told us, you've described the smell that was in the bedroom, but can you describe the smell that was in the communal corridor?
The same smell.
We know that there are lights in that landing area. Were the lights on?
Yeah, they were working.
And other than this faint smell of smoke, did you have any idea of where that smoke might be coming from?
No, I had no idea where it was coming from. I assumed it was in the block, and then I was puzzled as to why the alarm wasn't ringing.
And by the alarm, are you referring to that detector that we saw in the ceiling?
Communal alarm.
Could we expand, just let's look at paragraphs, keep paragraph 52, but just expand to paragraph 54, please. One second. I'm sorry, can we have paragraphs 52 to 54? Just picking up, please, Mr. Daniels, on the last sentence, where you say, of paragraph 52, where you say, I walked around a bit, but could not see anything. So whereabouts did you walk?
In the communal hallway and the stairs.
So did you, taking the communal hallway first, did you walk, for example, past the lifts?
Yes.
And at that time, was there anybody else in the communal hallway?
No.
And you say, you've just mentioned you went onto the stairs. Did that mean did you actually open the door to the stairs and go out there?
Yeah, I did.
And so, just again breaking it down, when you had to open the door to step into the stairwell, do you remember doing that?
Yep.
And what was it like in the stairwell at that time?
It's completely normal.
So was there a smell in the stairwell?
No.
And then, again, you tell us that you closed the door, and you went back to the flat and closed the door. And if we look at 53, I returned to the front room and looked out of the window again. The flames in the reflection on the panels of the school were bigger, and I realised that the fire must be growing. And so you're looking out here from your living room, is that right?
Yep.
And in 54, what you then go on to tell us is that you now went to try and explain to your father what was going on.
Yes.
And when you say he was reading, so he was awake when you came into his bedroom, was he?
Yeah, he was.
And you say that you told him there was a fire. He was confused. He did not believe that there was a fire. Do you think your father was able to understand that there was a fire?
Yes.
And so what was it that was making him confused?
I just don't think he believed me. He was generally confused. So at that time in the evening, he probably was tired, and it's just hard to communicate with him on most issues.
But what you do say, you've explained, of course, he had his bedroom window had to be locked, but that you think he was able, when you took him to the window, he was able to see some of the fire.
At some stage he was, yeah.
I'm just, if I draw your attention just to the last part of paragraph 54 there. You say you'd locked his bedroom door to prevent him from throwing things out. And because of his limited mobility, he struggled to see where I was looking, as he could not look down easily. However, I think he was able to see some of the fire. So do you remember just trying to take your father to the window to show him what was going on?
Yes, I remember that.
Now, what you'd also say that you told your father, and you say that in that paragraph, that you told him that you might need to leave the building.
Yeah.
What was it that made you think that you might need to do that?
That there was a fire in the block. So I wasn't paying much respect to the stay put advice given.
And you told us earlier that that was something that had been drummed into you and you were aware of.
Yes.
But what was it that was making you decide not to pay much respect to the stay put policy?
Probably my personality, but also the fact that the alarm hadn't gone off and there was clearly smoke in the block.
You'd spoken earlier about your concerns over your father, given his health, living on the 16th floor.
Yes.
Had you before made any kind of assessment of the risks that there were for your father living on that floor?
I did it to myself constantly, but I'm not sure if I said anything to social services or the council about it.
But was that assessment part of your thinking about the need to leave the building?
I don't remember, but in all likelihood.
Can we now look at paragraph 55, please? And we're now looking, Mr. Daniels, at the second time that you go back to your front door. And what you say is that I then opened the front door of our flat again. There was much more smoke in the communal hallway. It was thicker and darker. And I think, I didn't draw it to your attention, but in the preceding paragraph, you'd said that you spent about 5 minutes trying to show your father the fire through his bedroom window. So does that help you at all to tell us how much time had passed between the first time that you'd looked out and gone out into the communal hallway and this second occasion?
I think it did at the time of writing the statement, but now it's all... I'm quite bad at the timings at the moment, so I couldn't really judge.
That's fair enough. But was it a matter of minutes, do you think, taking into account the fact that you'd have a conversation with your father and then go back to the front door?
Yeah, it was minutes. It was maximum 5 minutes.
Now, the first thing that you noticed was there was much more smoke in the communal hallway, but before you opened your front door, was there any smoke that had come into your flat?
No, not that, apart from in my room. The smell of it, I hadn't seen any smoke in my flat.
So at that time, what you were aware of in the flat was the smell, but nothing else?
Nothing visible.
And you've described the smoke there as thicker and darker. Can you remember what it smelt like?
It had the same smell of plastic.
And when you stepped out into, or when you opened the front door, was it immediately there, or was it? And whereabouts was it in the communal hallway? Where did you see it?
Everywhere.
And when you say everywhere, was that floor to ceiling?
No, mostly the ceiling level. Say to waist, my waist.
And so you could see through some of the smoke, could you?
Yeah, it was a lot thicker than it had been previously, but it wasn't that dense.
Was there anyone, or were you aware of anyone else in the communal hallway at that time?
No.
If we pick it up at the next sentence, you say, I walked to the stairs and I could faintly hear shouting and panicking. Did you actually go into the stairwell again?
Yes.
And so again, would you have had to open the door, step into the stairwell?
I did.
On that night, did you have any difficulty with that stairwell door?
The stairwell?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
But with the door itself?
No.
No. Do you remember whether there was a door that once you'd stepped into the stairwell would close automatically after you?
My one certainly did, on my floor.
So you tell us that you went into the stairwell.
Yeah.
What were the conditions like in the stairwell when you went there?
Clear.
And when you stepped into the stairwell, did you allow the stairwell door to close behind you?
Yes.
And did any of the smoke that you had noticed on the communal hallway, was any of that coming into the stairwell?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
I just want to ask you a question about the last sentence in this paragraph, because you say, I think that one of the lifts was out of order that night, but I saw someone going down in the other lift. Can you just help us with this? What did you actually see?
I saw on the panels which show which floor the lift was on. I saw it go to a floor and then descend.
So when you say,
I assumed somebody was in the lift and using it.
so when you say you saw it go to a floor, does that
Mhm.
mean, did you see the lift travel up to a floor?
Yes.
And I know it's difficult, but are you able to say what floor that was?
No.
Obviously a floor higher than your own. And then
Not necessarily.
I see. So what you'd seen was the lift moving upwards
Mhm.
and then moving down again.
Yeah.
Was that from the indicator?
Yes.
You-
Above the lift doors, we had an indicator.
Yeah.
Now, when you were in the stairwell, what you say is that you could faintly hear shouting and panicking. Can you help us at all with where that shouting and panicking was coming from?
I think it was. I couldn't be sure
Do you,
right now.
do you have a sense of it coming from above you or below?
I vaguely remember it coming from above, but I can't be sure about that.
And by then, what you've done was you've come out of your front door into the communal hallway. You've noticed what was going on with the lifts, and you've gone to the stairwell. Did you
Yeah.
have any sense of where this thick, dark smoke was coming from?
No idea.
Could we look at paragraph 56, please?
Oh, sorry. I mean, at this stage, I did probably think it was inside the block, seeing as the smoke was inside the block, but no idea in the block where it was coming from.
So it wasn't the case. I mean, did you see anything coming out of the lifts
No, I didn't.
or through any of the
vents,
grills
I
or
didn't.
anything?
No.
Let's go back, same page, and we've got it up on the screen. It's paragraph 56, because what you tell us you then did was to go back to the flat and back to the front room, and you saw that the fire had come round the corner, so there was now fire on our side of the block to the right on the east side, but much lower down the building at about the 4th to 6th floor.
I think that should be the north side.
So,
So
you
it's come round to the north
Yes.
side.
So again, well, let's do it using your plan. Let's go to page 16. So what you've done is gone back to the flat and back to the sitting room, haven't you?
Yep.
So you're looking, can you remember which windows you were looking out of?
No, but one of the living room windows.
And you're looking north.
I'm looking at the academy,
And
so north, yeah.
And what you at that time had a sense of was that there was fire on your side of the block, but lower down.
I could see the fire had come round the corner onto my side, to the north side.
And did that, in order to see that, did you have to open up the window and lean out?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
can you tell us, just take us through what you had to do to notice the fire?
Turn the key, open the window, put my head out.
And when you look down, and you saw fire at the floors, what colour flames were you seeing?
Orange, red.
And were you seeing any smoke at all?
No. It was dark, so it was hard to see smoke in the night.
And was that the first time that you had an indication that there was fire on the outside of the block?
I didn't know it was on the outside. I assumed it was coming out of a property window at around the 5th floor. I didn't know it was on the outside of the block, apart from protruding through the window.
So
But-
would,
yeah.
would, it, would it be fair to describe it this way, that when you looked down, what you saw was, or what you thought you saw was flames coming out of a property?
Yeah, and wrapping round the corner onto my side. So I couldn't see where the flames were coming from, but I could see they clearly were coming round the corner.
Let's go to the next page, page 10, please. And could we expand paragraph 57? Now, at this point, Mr. Daniels, what you're telling us is that you went back to speak to your father, and you told him, you made a decision, in effect, that you had to leave, didn't you?
Yeah, I thought we had to leave.
And what you've mentioned in this paragraph is that we'd always been told to stay in our flat, but the amount of smoke was scaring me, and I was concerned the smoke alarms were not going off. When you're talking about the amount of smoke here, is it the smoke in the communal hallway that you're referring to?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And again, so we can take it in stages, at that time, was there any smoke in your flat at all?
No.
Take you to the next paragraph on this same page, please. Paragraph 58. And this is now the third time, isn't it, that you go back to your front door and out into that hallway.
Yep.
And so you say you went back into the communal hallway and opened the door to the stairwell. I saw an East African woman from one of the higher floors running down the stairs screaming. This did not make sense to me. I do not understand why she was so scared when she was coming from higher up the building, and I went back inside and slammed the door shut behind me to stop the thick black smoke entering the flat. So again, on this third time, you would have had to cross the hallway and make your way to the stairs, is that right?
Yep.
And you've described when on the second time you went out that there was thick dark smoke. What were the conditions like at that time?
They remained about the same
So,
as they were as I left the flat. So it was only a matter of seconds. I was in the stairs.
so when you step out of your front door, it's still similar conditions in that there's still thick dark smoke. Was it any worse? Or?
Not that thick. Not as thick as it was later on. I mean, it was breathable.
So at this time, had the smoke that you noticed on the communal hallway, had that had any effect on you at all?
Not that I noticed, no.
So, because this would have been the second time that you had ventured into the communal hallway, wouldn't it? Had it caused you to cough or splutter at all?
No.
Had it had any effect on your eyes?
Not as far as I'm aware.
And when you say you opened the door to the stairwell, again, did you step out into the stairwell?
Yes.
And what were the conditions like in the stairwell on this occasion?
They were clear.
So no smoke or anything at all in the stairwell?
Nothing of note, no.
Any smell of any kind?
No, because I'm coming from a smoky environment so it was like a fresh air. It was.
The East African woman from one of the higher floors, was that the only person that you saw at the time in the stairwell?
At that time, yeah.
Could you hear any shouting at all?
It was eerily quiet, apart from her.
And was she someone that you recognised?
I've seen her before, yeah.
And you say that she was from one of the higher floors. Did you know which floor she lived on?
No.
Let's now look at the paragraphs 59 and 60 of that statement, same page, page 10, please. if I may, Daniels, I'll read some of this out. But you tell us that you went back to your father, told him he had to put his shoes on as we needed to leave. He wore a tracksuit in bed, so he did not need to put on clothes. He was asking why we had to leave. I explained that the fire was on our side of the block. He was very stubborn and was not moving quickly. He was also very confused. He asked me to show him the fire. We got as close to the window as possible, and then from below us to the right, a wave of fire shot past the window. So, first question is, how long do you think it took for you to try to explain to your father what was going on?
It seemed like an eternity, but it was probably a matter of minutes, 2-3 minutes.
And when he wanted you to show him the fire, was that looking out through his bedroom window?
Through his window, yeah.
And what you describe as a wave of fire shot past the window.
Yes.
Can you give us a little more detail about what you actually saw at that time?
Yeah, so he was on his side of the bed, which is closest to the next neighbouring flat. I was on the other side of his bedroom, and his bed was right in front of the window. So we were both on the sides of the window, on either side. And we had our noses pressed up against the glass as I was trying to show him where the fire was on our side, which is around the 5th floor. He was never going to really be able to see it because of his mobility. And as we were doing that, from the right, a wall of fire just came across our window.
And how high up was that wall of fire?
It covered the window in my recollection.
So it was at your level,
It was
your
all
flat.
of a sudden at my level, yeah.
And what happened to that wall of fire? What happened next?
I don't know. It was there.
And did it stay there?
Yeah, for a while. I don't remember it not being there.
And do you remember where it was in relation to the window, the bedroom window of your father's room?
Well, I was on the left-hand side of the window, and he was on the right-hand side, and it covered the whole window.
And did you notice any debris falling at this time?
No.
What you say in paragraph 60, I was now very scared. In between telling him to get ready, I went to open the front door to see how much smoke was outside. On the last time I did this, it caused the smoke alarm in the flat to go off. There was so much smoke now that I knew we had to leave immediately. Now, where you're referring there to the last time you did this, are you referring to this occasion that you're discussing in this paragraph, or the previous occasion when you saw the East African woman in the stairwell?
I'm talking about this occasion now.
So, you opened the front door,
Yeah.
smoke came in, and you had 2 smoke alarms in the flat. Which one went off?
The one in the hallway.
And again, before you opened the front door, did you notice any smoke coming into the flat?
No.
So at that time, you didn't have it. There was no smoke at all in the flat, was there?
I can't say for certain because I kept going out into the communal hallway where there was smoke, so maybe I was accustomed to the smell at that stage, so there could have been.
But if we deal with it in this way, what you've described is obvious smoke in the communal hallway.
Yeah.
And was there anything similar like that in your father's bedroom?
No.
Did you notice anything of that smoke of that consistency in the hallway when you were walking out to the front door?
No. No.
And you've described that this wall of fire coming past your father's bedroom and being there. Did you notice at that time any smoke coming in through his bedroom window?
No.
So again, just to pick up on the last answer, was that no, that you don't remember smoke coming into the bedroom when you saw that wall of fire, or no, there wasn't any?
No, I don't remember.
Could we, just on the same page, just expand the bottom half from paragraph 61, please? Sorry, could I have 61 down to the remaining paragraphs on the page? Mr. Daniels, I'm just going to sort of summarise the paragraphs, if I may, but what then happened was that you shouted to your father, but you say he was disorientated and frozen in a daze, and you tried to grab him and move him, but as you explained, he was, I think, having been a bodybuilder in his time, he was still a very strong man. And it was
strong and stubborn and yeah, disorientated.
And you also had an injury to your hand, didn't you?
Yeah.
So, distilling it down, you were just not strong enough to move your father.
And I was scared of pulling him anyway in case he fell over. So, yeah.
What you then did was that you moved to leave the flat, and as you say, what you saw behind your father was the wall of fire through the window.
Yeah.
At that time, when you saw that wall of fire, was anything coming in through the window?
It was a split second. I couldn't notice anything.
And you shouted at your father to come with you, made your way to the front door, and opened it again.
Yeah.
And then you say thick black smoke came pouring in, and you had to close the door again. Is that right?
Yes.
At that time, looking at the smoke that was coming into your flat at that point, what was it like compared to what you'd seen earlier?
It was drastically different. I would say deadly.
What is it that makes you say it was deadly?
The density of it, the smell of it, the colour of it.
And did it just come pouring into the flat?
Yeah.
So can we go to the next page, please, and look from the top down to paragraph 65, please. So again, taking it in stages, what had happened now was that you'd opened the door once, the smoke had come in, you closed it, shouted to your father, come on, get out, and he wasn't responding to you at all.
No.
Do you think he had any awareness of what was going on at that time?
I'm not sure.
And then you say that you opened the door again and more smoke came in. And you continue, I was breathing it in and I could feel myself starting to lose consciousness. So can you give us a little bit more information about that? What effect was that smoke having on you?
It made me go lightheaded and my knees buckled. I fell onto where the boiler is now. So just inside the front door to the left.
And you've already told us you'd ventured out into the communal hallway a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the first time that the smoke had any effect on you?
Yeah.
And apart from making you feel lightheaded, did it cause you to cough or splutter?
Not as far as I can remember.
Did it have any effect on your eyes at all?
I don't recall that, no.
Do you remember your eyes watering or
No, not at that
being
stage.
irritated by the smoke in any way?
Not then.
You say...
This was a very short period of time, seconds.
And so was it the case that you opened the door, smoke came in, you closed it, but
Slammed
then
it.
you felt the impact on you at that time?
Yeah.
But what you do say is that my hood and went out of the door into the corridor. I left the door open in case my father came behind me. When you went out that time, do you remember where your father was?
He was behind me in his doorway.
So he'd come to the edge of the doorway where it met the hallway, is that right?
Yes, yeah. A little behind that, so still in his room, but approaching his door.
We don't need to read it out, but what you explain in paragraph 64 is the issue with the door, and you say that at the time our front door did not close by itself. But if we pick it up at 65, smoke was so thick that I could not see anything, so I had to feel my way around. As part of the refurbishment, they had put a box in the communal area which housed pipes. This meant that the layout was not as I remembered it, so it was difficult to find my way. There was thick black smoke everywhere. So you're now venturing out into the communal hallway.
Yeah.
Breaking that down, could you see anything at all?
I could see the ground.
Earlier, when you were answering questions to me, you said that the first time you came across the smoke, it was from ceiling to waist high, or your waist height.
And not very dense.
What was it like now?
You couldn't see anything at head height. And I would say you could only see up to the first foot on the ground.
Were you still aware of the lights being on in the landing?
Yes. Because it would have been pitch black otherwise.
And you described earlier that what a brief exposure to that smoke had done to you. When you stepped out now into the communal hallway, did it have any effect on you now?
No, because I was holding my breath.
Did you have any awareness of where your father was at this time?
I assumed exactly where I left him is what I assumed, but I have no idea.
If we expand now, please, from 66 down to 69 on the same page. What you say, picking it up at 66, Mr. Daniels, is I was aware that if I was struggling so much to breathe as a young, relatively fit person, my father would lose consciousness in seconds in the smoke. Now, you've said that you were holding your breath, but you mentioned there you were struggling so much to breathe. Can you tell us a little more about what was going on for you at that time?
As I was going through the communal hallway?
Yes, please.
As far as I remember, I covered my head with my hood, held my breath before I made a dash out of the front door, and felt my way along the wall where the box was. And I knew at the end of the box was the stair door. And once I got there, I just kicked it open and got into the fresh air.
If we look at 67, what you say is that at some stage I saw my neighbour. We were both feeling panicked. We crouched down on the ground and spoke to each other. He said his mother was not in the building. I explained my father was still inside. Now, did you encounter your neighbour in the stairwell or in the communal hallway?
I think it was in the stairwell. I can't be sure.
So, doing the best we can, you came out of your flat holding your breath and with your hood up, and just got across that hallway as quickly as you could.
Yep.
Kicking the stairwell door open.
Yep.
And when you got into the stairwell, what were the conditions like then?
They were clear.
So had they got any worse compared to what the stairwell had been like on previous occasions when you'd been in there on that night?
But once you come out of that smoke, you can't tell if the conditions have worsened or not, because you've just come through that thick smoke. So to me, it felt like a breath of fresh air, and it was a breath of fresh air.
And were the lights still on in the
Yes.
stairwell?
Yeah.
The neighbour that you described, do you know who that neighbour was?
Yes, I think his name's Hamid.
So is that Hamid Wabi who
I think so.
lived in flat 136?
Yeah.
And Mr. Wabi has helpfully told us that he's here today. So, you met, doing the best you can, you came across Mr. Wabi in the stairwell.
Yeah.
Yep. If we look then, what you then say is that you made your way, you ran down the stairs to try to find help. And if we pick it up at 69, when I reached what I was later told was the 11th floor, I saw a fireman. He was alone and he did not have any breathing equipment. He was covered in sweat. I explained that my father was still in our flat, that he had dementia and that I'd been unable to get him out. I told him that we lived in flat 135 on the 16th floor, and I asked him to help me. He said it was too dangerous for him to do anything himself, but he used his radio to call for a team to come.
Yes.
Now, when you came across the fireman, on what you later learned was the 11th floor, can you remember what he was doing there?
He was just standing there. It seemed like he seemed out of breath and like he had been through quite a lot. He had a panicked expression on his face.
If we go to the next page, please, page 12.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? We've been running for another hour since you last had a break. How do you feel? You happy to
Fine.
keep?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yep.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you say, can we expand 71 to 74, please? Oh, sorry, 70 to 74, forgive me. You explain in these paragraphs, Mr. Daniels, that you spent 5 minutes with this first fireman that you'd met, and then a team of 4 firemen arrived and went up the stairs. They were not wearing breathing apparatus. I stayed with the other firemen. We covered our faces to try and help us breathe.
I did, certainly. I'm not sure about him.
Well,
I don't think he did.
let's break it down then. So how sure are you in your mind that there were 4 firemen?
Now, after hearing the evidence,
Well, let's not
okay.
let's not go into the
now
evidence that you heard, but just going back to what you can remember. Do you still remember 4 firemen?
Yes.
And do you still remember?
Not 4, but more than 2. Less than 5.
So we might say 3 or 4.
Yes, 3 or 4.
And are you sure that they didn't have breathing apparatus?
No, I'm not sure.
So
I don't remember them having breathing apparatus.
and if we call them the sort of newly arrived firemen, were the ones that went back up the staircase. Is that right?
Yes.
And you stayed with the other firemen.
Yeah, I did.
Now you say and you've corrected us in that what you remember is you covering your face to try and help yourself breathe, but you can't be sure about the fireman you were with. But why did you have to cover your face?
I think there was a little bit of smoke in the stairs at that stage.
And could you see where that smoke was coming from?
No, but the conditions on my floor would I'd assume they would have been coming from the communal hallways.
And when you say a little bit of smoke in the stairwell, can you describe the smoke? Could you see it?
Faint, wispy smoke. Enough to make me cover my face, but not enough to be drastically uncomfortable.
And what colour was it?
Light grey.
And what you continue to say is that while you were waiting with the fireman, your neighbour, Ed Defan, passed you.
Yeah, I think we've missed something, which is that the team of firemen came back down before Ed Defan did, because they couldn't find the floor.
Okay, well, let's take it let's try and get the sequence right. So
I'm trying to.
they've come up and they've gone up, and then so they came back down. And what
Yeah.
happened when they came back down on that time?
They said they didn't know where the 16th floor was. And
Yeah.
what floor were we on at the moment?
One of the things you mentioned in your statement is that the way floors were numbered after the refurbishment.
Yeah.
Can you just help us with, on the floors that we're talking, on your own floor, the 16th floor, was there a number there to mark what floor it was?
I never noticed one, but the only reason I would have looked for one was on that evening, that night, and there wasn't one.
So, and did you look, when those firemen came down asking, because they couldn't identify the floor, did you look around where you were to find out which floor you were on with this fireman?
I think either the fireman or Hamid looked on the floors to see what floor we were on at that time.
And did you in the stairwell notice any marking identifying the floor you were on?
No, so I would have assumed that between the 11th and the 16th, none of the floors were numbered, as the firemen didn't know where they were.
So there was nothing to help the firemen to work out where they were?
No.
So what did they do then to try and identify which floor they were on?
They came back to us and asked us what floor we were on.
And who provided the answer?
I think the fireman I was with, he checked one floor he couldn't see because it was too smoke logged, and then he went down a floor, I think to the 11th, so I think we were on the 12th at that stage. And he said we're on the 11th floor, so they then ran up counting the floors to the 16th.
After they had gone back up, was it then that Ed Defan came down?
Yeah,
And did he come down alone?
he did. Yeah.
Now, what you say in paragraph 71 is my other next door neighbour was around. He was running around opening doors. He was trying to help. Is that Mr. Wabi?
Yes.
So I'd asked you about this earlier because you said, when you came across Mr. Wabi in the stairwell.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he was with you when you met the first fireman that you encountered?
I think so, but I can't remember that strongly, but I think he was.
And you've taken us through the sequence of the team coming up, then going further up the stairwell, coming back down because they couldn't identify the 16th floor, and the efforts that were then made to try and identify which floor number.
Yeah.
Was Mr. Wabi with you when this was all going on?
I'm not sure. He was at some points, but I'm not sure about for the entirety of the time.
But you have a recollection of Mr. Wabi being around at about that time?
Yeah.
Let's look then just at paragraph 74, please. You say the same group of firemen went up the stairs again, leaving me with the original firefighter I'd met. Shortly after, they came running down looking totally petrified. It was as if they were literally running for their lives. I asked the last one about my father. He said that they could not do anything. He told me no one could go up there and I had to leave. I turned to the fireman I'd been waiting with and he just said to me to get out. I ran with the fireman and it felt like I was running away from my father. When that fireman told you that they could not do anything,
Yeah.
what did you take him to mean by that?
They couldn't get to the property.
Did he tell you anything about how far they had been able to get?
No, they ran past us. And it seemed like they weren't going to say anything to us until I said to the last one, "Where's my father?"
And was it just a brief conversation, then he continued making his way down the stairs?
Yeah, I recall him saying, "We're getting out, you need to get out."
And at the time that this happened, what were the conditions like in your part of the stairwell?
Clear. I mean, the same wispy smoke was there, but it wasn't a bad problem.
We know that from the stairwell you can't just look straight up and see what's happening on higher floors, but did you have a sense of what was going on above you?
No.
Could we go, please, to page 13 and pick it up at paragraph 78? Just again to give that paragraph some context, Mr. Daniels, you explain in your statement that you then made your way down the stairwell and out of the building. And I just want to draw your attention to this paragraph just because from the timing purposes.
Mm-hmm.
You say you went outside, stood about 25 feet away from the building. It felt safe there. I stood looking up at the building. I knew for sure my father was dead at this point. I called my mother at 1:38 a.m. and she came to join me. Now, is that the time marker that you're using and from which you work backwards as to the events of that night?
It is, yeah.
Once you were outside the tower, did you speak to any other firefighter about your father?
I think it was a firefighter or a policeman, I'm not sure, yeah.
And what did you say to either the firefighter or the policeman?
That my father's in there.
And what details did you give?
Probably the floor number and the flat number. I think it was my mother who did that. I was not in the best shape mentally at that stage.
What you say, and we don't need to bring it up, but you say that your mum arrived about 2 a.m. So do you think any conversation with a firefighter or a police officer with your father would have happened after that?
Yes.
Do you remember a police officer asking you to give your flat details or your name at all?
No, I was pushed away from the scene. Not physically, but verbally. Told to move away.
Mr. Chairman, if I pause there, I'm going to ask for a short break so that I can just check with the other lawyers if there are other matters I need to cover.
You've got to the end of the questions that you...
that I would like to ask, yes.
Yeah. We are going to have a short break now, Mr. Daniels, because Mr. Ramat and others need to consider whether there are matters they should have covered but haven't. So we'll break now for 10 minutes and resume at 20 to 1.
Okay,
And
sure.
please don't talk to anyone about your evidence when you're out of the room. So if you go with the usher, she'll look after you. Thank you. Right, 20 to 1 then, please. Yes, Mr. Rowland.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. We do have just two short matters
Yes,
to cover with
of course, all right.
Mr. Daniels.
Well, could you ask Mr. Daniels to come back then, please? Thank you. I think there are a couple of questions. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Rowland.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Can I just take you back to IWS 608, page 8, please? And just look at paragraph
This is your statement.
50. This is of your statement, paragraph 50. Just sort of to give you some context to the question I'm going to ask. This is taking you back to, I think, the first time that you looked out of a window and you corrected that sentence to tell us that you would have been looking out of the living room window. And again, if I just read it, I corrected, it would read, I looked out of the living room window, saw flickering on the panels of the new school in front of the block. And with that context, can I take you to the plan in your statement, which is page 16? And we can see the sitting room there. And the questions are directed towards the flickering that you saw. And first of all, can you remember which window you looked out of?
No, it was one of the two. I've no idea.
Now, those windows face north.
Yes.
But are you able to say whether the flickering you saw was on the west or the east as you looked out?
It was to my right.
So
That would be. What would that be? Okay.
I think that would be the
it's
east.
the east, yes.
I think it would be the east.
So that's where you saw flickering to your right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, on the panels to my right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next matter is this, and it's to begin with thanks, actually. It's to say thank you very much for the witness statement that you've given and for coming to give evidence today. And I'd like to finish by asking you this question. Above what you have set out in your written statement and the answers that you've given to my questions today, is there anything else that you saw and heard on that night that you would like to draw to the attention of the chairman?
Just that there are things that are not in this, which are, I did see Maha in the stairs as well with the fireman, and I said to the fireman, because he's disabled, so I did say to the fireman, how's he going to get out? And he shrugged his shoulders. No criticism of him for this, but it's just something I've remembered since. And also a family from my floor, mother and father, and their daughter left our floor as well that evening while I was in the stairs with the fireman.
And if I could ask a couple of supplementary questions on that. Maha is Maha Kuder.
Who gave evidence yesterday, I think.
Yes.
And did you see him after your encounter with the fireman or before?
After.
And so did you see him on a lower level as you were making your way down?
I've got no idea.
And the family from your floor that you just referred to, did they pass you going down on the stairs?
They did, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
Well, Mr. Daniels, it's right that I should thank you very much for coming to give your evidence. As I've said to others, as I'm sure you understand, it's really important to us to know what conditions were like in the building at different levels at different times and how people had experienced it. So your evidence will be very helpful to us. I hope it hasn't been too difficult coming to relive those events. Anyway, you've given evidence very, very well, and I'm very grateful to you. So thank you very much. And you're free to go now. And if you go with the usher, she'll look after you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the evidence for this morning. We have another witness scheduled to start at 2 o'clock.
Right. Well, in that case, it's obviously convenient to break now and resume at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Very good. Thank you very much. 2 o'clock then, please. Okay.